All right, good afternoon, everybody. It is April 25th at noon, and we're kicking off our first Patterson Family Foundation Match Program 2024 conversations that we will hopefully continue here monthly for the next 6 months or as needed. We'll kind of make that decision as we go through the process, but wanted a chance at least monthly we can get together. That does not mean that we don't have to answer questions or hold questions until that meeting. Please keep reaching out to Carrie so that we can address any questions or issues that are coming up as you're doing your planning and organization. I'm gonna keep watching here for Erin. I don't know if that link is working. Yeah, we've got Carrie and I are in my office, and our new Hillsborough associate director is okay. So she's trying to get on, so we'll see if we can get her to join, and then go from there. All right, I'm going to share on the screen.
Yes.
The
Q&A.
Q&A that was circulated.
We thought it would just be helpful to start out by going through this. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to read it, but we wanted to go through it and see if there's additional questions or things that people need clarification on. Does everybody see that all right? Okay. All right. So one of the questions that had been asked is, do we need to identify right now what specific event or match day that you're wanting to do? And they have said that we don't have to report anything right now, but I do think it is a good conversation for those that have not started talking about it within their boards to start narrowing down that 30-day window and that day you want that match to be. So kind of be looking at, one more. Kind of be starting that conversation if you haven't already. So I wanted to just make sure that everybody knows that you don't have to turn anything in or adjust anything with your application, but start narrowing that time frame down. Patterson will match all the donations dollar for dollar. And if you don't raise the full amount, then there is a chance that you could apply for a second one, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But the goal is to hopefully raise that 70,000. In-kind donations do not qualify. Gifts of grain are eligible. The check needs to be received by the community foundation by the time your grant report's due. So the grant report is due 30 days after the completion of your 30-day event window. So then it does give you a little time, because gifts of grain sometimes don't come in right away. If there's an intent there during that match month, then it could come in as long as it's before your 30-day window is up to turn your grant report in. That also is the same with gifts of stock and IRA rollovers. So I just want to make sure that you know that. And match events are encouraged to focus on community foundation sustainability. So we're really trying to attract additional donors, additional donations to your foundation. It is the intent to do it, to be focused around one match event. You could do 2 events as long as it's within that same month time frame. So just keep that in mind, that you can do 2 things as long as it does fall within the 30 days.
I may just add to that a little bit. In my conversations with Christy Tustin, the executive director of Kansas Association of Community Foundations, who's helping Patterson and administering this grant award, the conversations that we have had have been very clear that the intention is for a match program to be supported. So looking at this as a program or a campaign, thus their reasoning for identifying a maximum window of a month for those activities. So as Carrie said, it could be an activity as well as a letter campaign or other outreach all within that month. You could do several different approaches, but it's part of your program. What is your match program per their requirements as the funder? So that clarification was helpful to kind of walk back through and to understand their intention behind that, not that their match dollars are there to fund other fundraising activities or events that the foundation may hold, but your match program.
And it could be that the match day, say of April 20th, is the kickoff for your 30 days. It could be that you have an event, but you need a couple weeks prior. Maybe you're getting sponsors or donations ahead of time, and then it could go to a couple weeks after your day. So there is some flexibility there. It just has to be within that month-long period of time. The next thing is that they are very clear that they do not want to support anything with a gun raffle, fireworks, community fairs, county fairs, political organizations, which that was in their last year as well. So just remembering that. We've kind of already touched on this with it being a one-day event, month-long campaign, or something in between. If you raise your funds in 2 weeks, great. Go ahead and turn in your report. If it takes a full 30 days, that's fine. Make sure though you get that report in within 30 days after. Your first event needs to be finished and your report needs to be turned in before you could apply for a second one. So say you have one in June and you don't hit quite the 70,000 and you guys want to do another event, you have to have that report turned in before you can ask for a second one. But they are only giving special consideration to second events. We don't know that very many second events will be considered. It will be a case-by-case basis, so keep that in mind. Moving on to this back page of that, this just talks again about the 30-day window. If you're trying to find where that grant report is, if you go to the original email that was sent to your foundation, there is a link that will take you straight to the document. I believe it's like a Google document that you will fill it out. And you can look at it ahead of time and jot down some of your answers. But it is a document that it's embedded into your original email. The questions can also be found on the Patterson website if you want to look those questions up ahead of time. But we do need to make sure you get those in within 30 days. And then I believe Angie said we would be providing the W-9 for the foundations. And then within 2 weeks, they should be paying out the funds after they've received your report. We have turned in our first report. Fredonia got theirs submitted yesterday. So we'll kind of see how that goes and that turnaround time. But they're saying within 2 weeks is the goal for them to get the funds sent out.
I will add too, I think it is helpful if you do take a look at the questions for reporting in advance. Like one of the questions is how many volunteer hours were utilized to conduct your event? So it's nice for some of you that have not started your events to be really intentional about thinking about that within your board or other volunteers that are helping support those activities, that they do want to kind of see what kind of volunteer hours is it taking to have those events. So definitely take a look at that, all the questions, but that was one that really stuck out to me to say, we're not always tracking those kinds of hours, but I think it's neat to do, and a real compliment to a lot of your board members that are volunteering their time to pull off events.
Yes. If you've already hosted an event that you want matched, please get those grant reports in. Like I mentioned, they want them in within 30 days. So some of them could be on the fence, or if you've chosen not to do that as a match, that's okay as well. I know some of the events were held early on before we knew all of the criteria. And then as a reminder, Patterson's not going to match donor advised funds. That includes contributions to new or existing funds. However, if you have somebody that has a donor advised fund outside of our organization, so like with an Edward Jones account or an Everett's account, they can make a donation from that account, but it cannot go into a donor advised fund. it would need to go into a different type of fund to count as a match. And then we did go ahead and list on here all of the foundations under our umbrella that did receive the match this year. It's the same as last year. They did choose not to fund about 12 foundations this year that were new applicants from last year because of funding. They were unable to. So we did have one from Burton that was not able to because they were not in existence yet last year. So, but all of our others that applied did receive it. And then at the bottom of that page, I do have a link that will take you to their press room that has marketing materials and things specifically for Patterson Family Foundation. On the CKCF website, there's also some match materials that were on there from last year that are still applicable for this year if you want to use them, but they are on the CKCF website. And then if you've got questions that we don't get addressed today, please email those to me. We're forwarding them on and getting answers and trying to compile this so that we can send this out monthly, but we can also get you answers as quickly as we can because we know things are very time sensitive. So please forward questions to me, however many that is, so that we can make sure and get those addressed.
And as we add to the Q&A document here, it'll just be date stamped. So you see the 4/18 on this version. If there's other really helpful questions that we get answered and Carrie updates this, we'll just redate it. That way you'll know it's a newer version and there's something additional included.
And our goal is also to get on our website a landing page. There is one on there that says applications are open until whatever the date was in February or March. We plan to update that and have the recordings from our meetings on there and to have these little newsletter communications on there as well. So probably here in the next week or two, we'll get that landing page going. Just trying to think, most of this stuff we've already kind of touched on. I guess I'd like to open it up for questions before we talk about some of my strategies. Does anybody have questions or need clarification on anything?
I have two. This is Max. First one would be, I know I've heard this and I know you've explained it to me several times, but as we're looking to do the scholarship funds we have as matches, and let's say we have a donor who is going to give, if we were match up to 5,000, they write a check for 5,000. That is okay, correct? A donor going to a scholarship that they have started and
yes, I mean, those are not considered donor advised funds. Okay. They are not the sole recommender. That's why we have the external review committees. So it's not classified as IRS does for a donor advised fund. Thanks for that clarification. Because in some ways, we do have our originating donors a lot of times at the table, being on review committees, but they are in a minority position. It's also the term called related parties. So close friends or family of an established fund. Typically, these are legacy funds, things like that. It's okay. It's not a donor advised fund because they do not have the end recommendation authority as a donor advised fund does. But that's a great question.
I know you've explained that to me several times. I just want to make sure again, as we're trying to move that way. The other one would be, so let's say we have a kickoff on May 1. I'm just giving you some dates, not necessarily what we're doing. But and then we could have an ending like May 25th. We could have another event, meaning during that 30 days to finish up the 70,000.
Yes.
Because you'd be developing it as your program. What's your match program? Our match
Right.
program for this month is going to be a kickoff event, a letter campaign, and then a wrap-up event kind of thing.
Okay.
You know, but
Okay.
thinking about it in what are we going to include in that campaign period? Because what we learned and what was fabulous last year, and we hope grows more and more, and what is the purpose behind match leveraging, is we actually bring in more than just the match from Patterson.
Right.
Most of us experienced that in our campaigns, that there was greater than just the 70,000 that was brought in. And that's what we want for our funds and for the community to have those resources. So if at the end of the day, you end up bringing in, $200,000, good for your community. Only 70 will be matched, or if you've lined up additional matching donors. Again, this is not exclusive to Patterson for a match program. They're the igniters for all of us, but there's a real opportunity here to also help identify, are there other donors that want to match? Or maybe Max and Aaron, maybe your scholarship program is your focus for the Patterson match, but maybe you have another matching funder that's for any other fund at Hillsborough. And be encouraging just that philanthropy, because maybe not everybody's passionate about scholarships. We wouldn't understand that, but maybe they aren't. But those kind of things are ways to make your program bigger, wider, appeal to a broader group of donorship. So those are just kind of things to be considering as you're looking at the program. And I think for all of us, you guys, we don't know how long this generosity is going to come from Patterson. So building those relationships, building those bridges for other matching donors that help leverage gifts, or just the influx of additional relationships with donors is going to be very valuable to continuing on, whether or not Patterson's at the table. So we're very fortunate we have them. But one day will come, just like those of us that were around with Kansas Health Foundation during the GROW match initiative. Those initiatives were over 7 years, but when they were done, they were done. And we've continued then to build on that with our Kansas Health Foundation health funds that most of you have. So do just tuck that away. It's not to get you bogged down with thinking, oh, this isn't going to last forever, but it's to say, don't get too narrow-minded on this is Patterson's process. This is your campaign. This is your affiliate. This is your work in building your community and building your opportunities.
Thank you.
Welcome.
He's like, longer answer than I wanted, Angie.
One of the things I also mentioned that was asked to me that wasn't on here was when to turn in the donations. And the sooner that you get your checks and donations turned into Melinda here, the better. You kind of hold a liability if you're hanging on to checks for a while in your vehicle or at home. And it's just good practice to get those to the foundation office sooner than later and get those monies deposited sooner than later.
And the additional point for that, to protect Melinda a little bit, if you bring it the day before your report's due, anything could happen. She could be away on her vacation. She could be here or there. If you leave it too long to the last minute, you may not have the full report and the deposits made at the foundation. We all work really hard to make sure we keep up on those things and have backup plans, but those are other reasons. If there's a stack of $200,000 of gifts from 100 different donors, that takes a while to input. So, weekly through your campaign or what have you, for those that aren't in the immediate Newton area, I mean, those are where it's helpful that we get that so it is kept up on. Just another consideration.
I have a question. Besides Gossel, how many others have already started their 1 month campaign?
Fredonia's already completed theirs, so they actually turned their report in yesterday.
Yeah, I know you said that, but I mean that are still, that haven't done the report.
There are some of us that have done some events, like Heston did an event in February, but their board chose not to use that as a match because it did not generate enough funds. So they're gonna do a bigger match later in the year. CKCF as well, we were going to have our Springs 4A be matched, but we felt it would be a better benefit to wait and do a Giving Tuesday push. So I believe you might be the only one right now in Gossel that's active. But I know some
Yes,
are starting in May.
Our volunteer hours are unlimited. I just want you to, I want Patterson to know that. I mean, there's no way you can keep track of your hours. I mean, it's hours and hours. Particular when we're already down 5 days, or at least that much in the 30-day period, so anyhow. Okay, got it.
So give us your best guesstimate of hours when you go to fill that in. 2,000 hours or whatever it might be.
I hear you.
Yeah. Are there other questions that you might have? Looks like
There's a couple of questions in the chat.
Yeah, that's what I was just having her see if we can read them.
So. Can you read them? If not, I can read them to you.
Okay, they're doing construction in my house. It's loud, so if I leave the mic off. How many days early or late from the match event are we still counting donations to get matched?
That really falls within the 30 days. So however you want to count it. If your event's on the 15th and you receive money on the 5th, that's fine, but then it needs to end by the 4th of that next month, if that makes sense. So you can back count that, but then you also have to look forward at your cutoff date window.
Yeah, they're not overly explicit on that. Like I was sharing about our soiree that we had started getting sponsorships more than a month prior, but it was for the event on that night. And they were like, no, that's too long. We're talking a little bit before, a little bit after, with the exception that like the grain checks coming in after an intent to give, they have that full window 30 days post before your report is due. So it's really using the parameters of that maximum event window. And then let me scroll down here again. We plan our dates. Should we confirm Melinda's schedule availability to ensure she is not on vacation, or that we aren't going to do ours at the same time? I mean, it never hurts just to definitely you'll be letting Carrie know what your parameters are. Those are just internal things. So if there does need to be a deposit made, things like that. Go ahead, Melinda.
Fortunately, my big vacation I take is in March. It's already over. So you're good for 2024. And it's like that every year. So I don't take big vacations except one. So we're safe for the rest of 2024.
Yeah, but just still the warning. I mean, the one day before, don't expect us to be able to pull off 100 different donations input into the system in one day. That's why if we keep pace,
especially if very many of them are new donors and we have to create profiles for all of them, that takes a little more time as well.
Right.
But I will always do my best. I will.
Yes, you.
If I have to work at night, I'll work at night to make sure you get your stuff entered. I understand that some things happen.
Other questions?
I wonder if anybody would want to share what they're doing
We're thinking
or
about.
thinking about doing. Maybe even Gossel shares what they're doing if they want, since they're currently in their campaign, or if Heston wants to share, Christy, you want to share what Heston's planning, feel free to, that's how we need to learn from each other.
Well, we decided to go, we had in place our April 20 spring dinner and celebration. The invitations had been sent out prior to April 15, so we were committed to that date. And we had an attendance of 90 people, many of those are donors, and felt this was the perfect time to announce the foundation because they were all there. We gave each one of them a self-addressed envelope to our foundation with a stamp explaining to them that we only had 30 days, please return it. So we did have a $15,000 scholarship that was opened Saturday night on the 20th. So we're already 15,000 down the road, and I think we've gotten another 2,000 already. So, but we are frantically reaching out to all of our database to try to explain to them that, hey, work fast, it's now. And so anyhow, that's why we're under this gun. None of our other activities that we do draw the amount of people to one location like this one does. So, hey, we're going for it.
It's the big plug-in.
It's different than ours. It might be plugged into the wall.
It's by the TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, that check mark that
Yeah.
just came on. And just to add on to what Carol was saying, I mean, they have crafted some very specific letters to certain audiences. So to know as appeals, we all hear about appeal letters. Those are quite helpful and valuable, but also the personal touch of then the personal follow-up, which Gossel has a plan as well. So just to kind of keep that in mind too, that's part of the.
Is that what it? It's got a round. It's got
It's the big round. Sorry, my computer's dying from working out at the table, so the girls are trying to find a cord.
The other thing I'd say too is I know they put together a newsletter that they're going to send out to their database that Carol had shared, and I thought it was great. I think that is really nice to have some pictures in there and explaining and sharing in a different way and having something that you can send out. I really liked it.
Thanks.
Yeah. Anyone else want to share?
We don't have anything, we're still in the very early stages, but when I went out to meet with some of the nonprofit organizations in Heston, when I was at one of the places, they said they're thinking about doing a Thanksgiving community meal this year. And so I'm going to be meeting with him next week to see if we can somehow partner with that meal. I don't know how that will look, or if he didn't say if they were using it as a fundraiser or anything, because I didn't know all of this yet. So otherwise I would have picked his brain a little bit more. But so we're going to try see how that might go and see if that might be a possibility as like a kickoff, and then ending it like after Giving Tuesday, and we kind of doing a letter campaign and promoting that month with that community meal as a kickoff. So anyway, that's kind of where we're at. I'm anxious to know what direction we're going so that I can move forward, which I'm sure everyone is at that point. But I think there could be some real possibilities and some real advantages to partnering with other organizations in the community to get people out.
That's great.
Just while whoever's next kind of thinking about your event, I meant to say this earlier and forgot to, but thinking about your proceeds from the match, last year, most of the foundations figured out an equation, either 100% followed the gift of the donor, or 30% went to operations and 70% followed the donor, or 50-50. I mean, there was a big variety from all of our affiliates that received match last year. Many of you, I know in side conversations, we've had the discussions about should that be greater into operations based on the desire to sustain our associate director positions and start building a little more of a nest egg. So those are other considerations. And that is where in your promotional materials, as you're preparing for your events, that we are very intentional about being transparent about where the match dollars are going and how that's following your protocol. So as you share, I don't know if you all have made those decisions, or even Hillsborough, if you've made that decision, what percentage going to the scholarships is going to operations for that purpose. Maybe not been fully talked about yet, but important that you do, so it's on your collateral materials in advance of events that haven't happened yet.
Something to keep in mind and to be having that discussion about. And I know several boards have been talking about it. So, and I believe Halstead is trying to collaborate with the Historical Society to do an event in July. And so they're having some planning sessions next week to where they could have theirs kick off in July. So I know other foundations are doing letter writing campaigns, and a lot of people I think are going to consider those around Giving Tuesday and have have a few months to save the date and lead up to that and have a lot of great conversations prior. So I think each organization, each area is going to be a little different as to what's going to work, but trying to have that discussion and determine what works best for your community. Anybody else want to share or have other questions? Otherwise, we might be able to wrap up here. All right.
Exciting times.
Yes.
Well, don't be afraid to reach out with any inquiries to Carrie or myself and each other. That's why we liked this group too. Just another place you hear something from Gossel or from Elk County and you want to tap into it a little bit more. I mean, don't be afraid to talk to each other. That's what we want. We learn from each other and actually create even better ideas when we put other minds and experience behind it. So thank you all for coming on.
Thanks for
you.
planning this. This is helpful information. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. We'll see you later.